Hello, everybody. We're back. We're back. Keep calm. Stop the madness. Ask your friends to join our show. We're going to be on YouTube. We're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and the radio at KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo Moorhead.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to us here at a Mexican Crossing Lines. We've been gone for almost a month now.
Yep.
Almost exactly a month. For a much-needed hiatus so that we could take care of our in-house and in-home studio things, give Duke a much-needed opportunity to catch up on other local programming, grant writing, and also just holiday preparations, not to mention the fact that COVID has hit our family hard. I know that it's really hitting everyone in this country hard in one way or another. We've had 3 deaths, and currently I have one aunt which has been in ICU for the past 3 weeks. So shortly after we found out about people's illnesses, many people in our family getting sick from COVID just in the last month. That's when we went on hiatus, and now we're back. And boy, have things been crazy. I'm going to try to catch you up on the latest tonight on my program here on a Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. I don't think we could have come back at a more perfect time in history, because I think that it is closing a chapter on the madness, closing a chapter on the craziness that we have experienced through the few last months of the year and through this election cycle. This is a historical election by any stretch of the imagination. This particular election that happened during a pandemic will be discussed and studied probably for the next 100 years or longer. It's a really, really important election.
For sure.
And what took place and what is going to happen in the future. And as you know, yours truly here at a Mexican Crossing Lines, we're here to inform the public. That's our main goal, to inform our listening and viewing public. And we bring you the facts. You know me, I always bring the receipts. I bring them to you. I present them to you because I want you to make the best decision for yourselves. And I want you to see the evidence of what is available for you to examine, for you to understand. So I've always brought you the receipts, and I intend to continue to do so. That is my goal as a reporter, as a media broadcast station, and many times my views and the information I am presenting are not very popular. That can happen, but this is not a popularity contest. This is a radio station. And so we're going to continue to strive to bring you the facts and the evidence so that you can make your best informed decision. First, before I get into the results of the Electoral College certification that occurred yesterday, and all of the statements that senators, especially Republicans, started making, congratulating Biden and Harris and acknowledging the election results, for many of them for the first time, including Mitch McConnell, I want to thank all of you for continuing to support the work of an independent media platform like KPPPLP. Duke, how can folks support our station's work and send us messages?
Well, there's several ways. First of all, I'd like to thank a donor that's been sending us a card and a donation every month. Thank you. You know who you are. We really appreciate it. We haven't been on the air. Well, we've been doing our work, but we haven't done these shows for almost a month. We appreciate the support. If you would like to support us, there's all sorts of ways to do that. Plus, you can just get in contact with us. I'll go through that first. You can call our message line. It's a message line at 701-566-0917, 701-566-0917. Leave a message up to 3 minutes. In fact, right now we're asking people to give some holiday cheers, some holiday greetings to whoever you prefer. We'll play it on the air and the radio at 88.1 KPPPLP here in Fargo-Moorhead. You can go ahead and do that by calling that number. You can also tweet us at media_PPP and email Cindy at kpppfm.com or Duke at kpppfm.com. You can go to Facebook and follow us at 88.1 Fargo-Moorhead, the People's Press Project of Mexi-Can. You can also find Cindy's public page at Cindy Gomez-Schempp on Facebook.
It's kind of both of ours. We started as a couple, but, what we've captured on social media, what we've captured in the reporting of our program is what's happening in our community, hyper locally, but also what is happening throughout our country. We've been documenting a lot of movements going all the way back to Standing Rock and going through the caravans, leading through all of the protests this summer, and to this moment of this elector crisis, because our country very much has been in a crisis mode through these elections, and especially after the elections were called. There has been a dispute, an ongoing dispute about what the results of these elections actually are. And as many of you know, as a paralegal, I follow the legal part of it very carefully. And when I say that this year will be studied for many years to come, I'm talking about the legal strategy by the president to try to overturn the election results, to try to make an argument to all of the courts in all of the states at every single level, district court, appeals court, circuit court, twice to the Supreme Court for the last 6 weeks, 60 cases almost. And they all had one thing in common. They lost. There was one case that had to do with, I believe, Pennsylvania being allowed to count absentee ballots after the date of the election.
It had to do with the distance.
And there was something that they won on whether or not they could get closer to watching the results, the election happening. But nothing substantive, and certainly nothing that would overturn the results of this election. If you're not a scholar of the law, if you've never studied the law and you don't understand how to read pleadings and you don't understand what standing means, what jurisdiction means, if you don't understand what latches are, if you don't know why a court can dismiss a case with or without prejudice, and what all of these decisions have meant, if you've been following them, if you haven't been reading them, then for the average American, for the average layperson, all of this is going to be very confusing. Also, apparently in this country, most people don't understand how elections work. We really don't know soup to nuts, step by step, how election works and how the electors are chosen and and when do they vote, and what happens after they vote, and what does Congress do, and all of the rules about that. And so that also can be very confusing. You, Duke, have always worked with people to get out the vote and to, encourage people to be part of democracy.
That's right.
What is this election cycle, the confusion around what's going on and what people can and can't do? What is that indicated?
There's all sorts of things. I've been doing voter turnout, trying to get people out to vote, and working on election issues for years. And this year, it's like I'm understanding a lot more. I never followed the Electoral College. I knew about it. I read it in the Constitution. I knew they met. I knew those things. But I never knew all the details of how votes get certified. But I did know that because I participated in a recount before in a county. So I watched them count votes, and they announced and how they did it all. And so I've been through those sorts of things. I think the average person doesn't know. And we've gotten really easy to just think the media is covering elections, and actually it's not official. You're learning that now when it's official, but the canvassing boards that meet and all the different safeguards we have set up in our states. I've always done absentee voting too, and I've always encouraged it. Things have changed over the years, but this year is suddenly controversial, even though I've been voting that way for many years, and I encourage many other people to do that. I've worked with students, people that are here from other communities that might be living here temporarily, how they can cast their vote legally, because every American citizen has a right to vote. And this is it's been a lot of spin, but an opportunity to become educated on how the voting system really works.
So if you add to it the complicated legal issues, the fact that most people don't know about how the whole process of voting from beginning to end, and how things get certified, and when the electors get to vote, and all of that, you add to it that this year we had a pandemic.
Yeah.
And that we had unprecedented numbers of people go out and vote. And to that, you also need to add the fact that people have been suffering this year in particular. Unemployment, being thrown out of their homes, their businesses shutting down, and of course, the unrelenting pandemic. And this has been, the background music, the background noise, if you will, to all of the other struggles that we've had this year with the protests in the streets for months and months and months that are still ongoing. This last weekend, Washington, D.C., was bracing for the protests about this election, and there was violence, and there were churches that were vandalized, that had their Black Lives Matters signs destroyed and or burned. People were stabbed and put into hospitals, and some remain there in critical condition. So what this has led to has been madness. Nothing short of chaos, utter chaos and madness. And now it is time for that to stop. I think everyone understands this. I think everybody knows this. But we're now seeing, that the most influential and top Republican leaders are saying it. And everyone was waiting for Mitch McConnell. Everyone was looking at Mitch McConnell because we all knew that when Mitch McConnell spoke, that would be the end. And here he is today, the day after the electors of the Electoral College have their votes certified, saying this.
So today I want to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden. The President-elect is no stranger to the Senate. He's devoted himself to public service for many years. I also want to congratulate the Vice President-elect, our colleague from California, Senator Harris. Beyond our differences, all Americans can take pride that our nation has a female Vice President-elect for the very first time. I look forward to finishing out the next 36 days strong with President Trump Our nation needs us to add another bipartisan chapter to this record of achievement.
Did he smile? Did you see him smile when he said that he was proud that we're going to have a female vice president?
Mm-hmm.
Why, he looked practically giddy.
Yeah, he looked like he was excited.
Yeah, like, hey, this is a man, by the way, because, come on, folks, this is a man that had been, according to every conservative, towing the line for Trump, backing him up in everything he was doing. Or was he? A lot of people are pretty angry. Many Trump supporters especially are very angry. And since many of them left Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media platforms that are now increasingly cracking down on information that they feel is false, misleading, or dangerous, that violates their community standards, so many of them have gone on to Parler. And that's exactly where we found the following messages, statements. This one from a Melissa calling Mitch McConnell, an expletive, saying he can go beep himself. They're pretty mad.
Yeah.
That cheating beep isn't my president. This is the sentiment of someone that is furious, both at Mitch McConnell and at the fact that Mitch McConnell is signaling the end of the madness, saying this has got to stop. We got to move on. Welcome President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, our first female vice president.
That's right.
He smiles. Ding. Here's what Laura Loomer posted on Parler. She said, Mitch McConnell is a traitor. The Republican Party leadership has failed our country and the American people. Folks, where was everyone? I don't understand the outrage and the surprise at Mitch McConnell of today. Because over a month ago, while our president was sick with coronavirus in Walter Reed Hospital, and after he tweeted the command, I believe in all caps, "Get this done," referring to the stimulus package for the hardworking American people struggling in this pandemic. When he gave that directive to Mitch McConnell said no. Mitch McConnell said, nope, and probably not for the rest of the year. Do you remember that, Duke?
I remember that for sure.
Because
I remember it, yeah.
The moment it happened, I saw that Mitch McConnell put the nail in the coffin to the Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. It was the beginning of the end of the Trump campaign. I called it at the time what it was: a sabotage of Trump's campaign, a backstabbing of Trump and his campaign. Y'all didn't see that? Did you not notice that? That Mitch McConnell basically abandoned him and said, good luck getting reelected without any stimulus checks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, I do have to say, and we have to say this because it is the truth, and I am frustrated personally, okay, with a lot of Republicans, Trump supporters, and in fact people working to get him reelected and or close to his campaign, that know from an insider's point of view, that have been talking about Trump's faux pas and picadillos for months. In fact, that have said that he failed to listen to his advisors on so many times about so many things that were key to making sure he won in swing states, including going back and campaigning or rallying more in those states, and also arguing with his staff over whether or not he put revenue into ads in certain states or pulled it. In addition to that, There are so many egregious examples from Trump supporters themselves about working within his campaign or close to his campaign to reelect him, about his self-sabotage, about the things he has said and done in public, despite being advised not to do so because it would cost him votes. But all of you know Trump. It's Don's way or the highway. That's what many people love about Trump, the fact that he doesn't listen to anyone but his gut first. And that many people, including Bill Stepien, and what was the name of the other guy that said that he gave his entire life for him?
Oh, yeah, I remember
his
that.
campaign manager that got arrested. They said as much. They said that many of the mistakes that cost him the election were self-inflicted wounds. The attacks on Republicans and conservatives within his own ranks did not start after the elections. They started well before and throughout his campaign. Look how many people were fired and replaced, and that only accelerated during his legal battles. Mm-hmm. He had advisors and he had lawyers that defended him throughout his presidency that could have stepped up. He could have chosen people that were specialized in election law, but he didn't. We heard that the legal team, many of whom were summarily dismissed because of their ineptitude, were replaced with people not suited to take on such an important election battle for the presidency of the United States, such as Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Paxton.
Yeah, Paxton, yes.
And Paxton.
Yep.
Okay, and we'll get to him and the craziness of what he has done. But the reality is still the reality, and we have to acknowledge that. Beyond the self-inflicted wounds, there are many people very close to Trump's campaign that noticed and that revealed through leaks to the press that he just wasn't enjoying his job anymore. It wouldn't be the first time that someone that didn't want anyone to see them weak, we know that's Trump. Mm-hmm. You know, he doesn't like anyone to see him appear to be weak. Never let him see you sweat. I'm sure that's his motto. You know how it wouldn't be the first time that somebody like that tried to save face, but really didn't have their heart in it anymore. And I think many real, knowledgeable Trump supporters can see that he didn't have his heart in it anymore. Maybe now that this presidency is over, he will be able to turn his attention to things that matter more to him. Perhaps setting up a media platform to compete with Fox. Perhaps to run again in 2024. Who knows? But his time will be much better, well spent in doing other things. And folks, I know that to diehard Trump supporters, what I'm saying is horrifying and disgusting and all sorts of other very disturbing emotional things. I'm sorry. Please don't shoot the messenger. I'm only here to inform you of what is happening and what is about to happen. And I'm basing it on what I see happening in Congress. Let's take a look at some of what other Congress members have said. These are top-ranking Republicans, most of whom had toed the line for Trump and backed him no matter what. And now they have finally changed their tune. That is the writing on the wall. And here is the tweet. It says, Senate Majority Whip John Thune quote, I understand that there are people who feel strongly about the outcome of this election, but in the end, at some point, you have to face the music. And I think that once the Electoral College settles the issue today, it is time for everyone to move on.
So that was yesterday. So, when the Electoral College actually did their accreditation, their votes, their actual votes. I don't know if your folks watched any of it. I went to several live streams all over the country where they met and they sat in a room, and it depends on how many electoral votes they have. They convened in the House in their state capital and voted with ballots and did a formal process, and now they take the ballots to Washington. In the Constitution, that's when the presidential election is decided. It is decided at that point. I'm glad that the Senate Majority Leader has acknowledged the truth of the Constitution.
Now, this could have been something that top-ranking Republicans could have acknowledged earlier. And frankly, I don't know who advises the president on whether or not he should continue this fight. I don't know how many people, other than those we know are very, very close to him, like Lindsey Graham, are advising the president about whether or not he should keep up this fight. Mm-hmm. But I will say this. In my opinion, if the president wanted to have a more successful chance of a re-election bid in 2024, he should have quit this losing battle 2 or 3 weeks ago, so that he could have instead focused his attention on the runoffs in Georgia, mm-hmm. secured a win for the Georgia senators so that they Democrats did not flip the Senate, which they are now poised to possibly be able to do because of the infighting in the Republican Party and the fighting and the attacks by the president and many of his lawyers, advisors, and followers of Republicans in Georgia, including Senators Loeffler and Perdue, and secured a legacy for himself that could have included a run for 2024 and all the fundraising that goes along with it. I think that by not doing that, he really hurt himself. What's your...
Well, I think so, too. I think also another thing he did, in my opinion, he did such a disservice to the people that support him. There's so many people that are so emotional about the results because they were led along that something would change. They were basically manipulated into thinking there was a chance that Trump could win even though he had lost the election. And all this stuff has been brought up, and it has made people not trust our whole democracy. And that's a disservice because if he was going to run in 2024, he should have been building that base and building that momentum from day one. That's the conclusion. Come back again and take it back. But he has done a disservice to Trump voters, and they're sitting in limbo now. What do? We have a new president, and they're not going to acknowledge it. We have a Congress that's going to make decisions for all of us. You have to trust again in our democracy.
I don't think it's going to last for long, to be honest with you, because the majority of people in this country need for our government to work for all of us. I think people are just as fed up with Mitch McConnell and the Republicans holding up our stimulus package and holding up the relief that is needed for businesses in this economy during this pandemic. I think we're all angry about that. That's I think right. We're mm-hmm. all sick of waiting for that mm-hmm. to happen. I think that for the majority of people in America, they're somewhere in the middle, not at the extremes, either of the left or the right. And we need right now more than ever for our vaccine effort, one of the most difficult in human history, to be rolled out, to be able to get back to some kind of normalcy in the future. We need for our Congress members to work, especially now with this incoming government that is inheriting a broken economy, millions of people unemployed, millions more, without housing and or about to lose it, and over 500,000 people, possibly by that time, 500,000 people gone forever because of COVID-19. It's going to be a rough inheritance to deal with, to clean up, to fix. And the only way that we can make that process easier is if we've got a working government. I believe that the people that are stepping forward right now and speaking about the way we would move forward, such as Lindsey Graham, understand this fundamentally. This is what he had to say. Lindsey Graham said it is a very, very narrow path for the president. I don't see how he gets there from here. That's a man who is basically letting Trump supporters down easily and saying, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell. I don't see anything. By the way, this was a man that kept telling Trump, go, 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 continue to fight, 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 even though he's a lawyer, even though he should know better, even though if he was reading any of these Mickey Mouse pleadings. I just got to explain something real quick for the lay folks out there, okay? There are some basic requirements of a lawsuit that you need to be able to meet. If you cannot beat these very, very basic, components of a lawsuit, you don't have an adequate lawsuit. It's probably going to be dismissed or thrown out right from the get-go because it doesn't meet the requirements, right? The first of those requirements is, where are you suing? Are you suing in the right spot? I can't go down to a Dunkin' Donuts and sue anybody, right? I may go up to the manager. I could pitch a fit. I can bring a bunch of protesters and scream outside with signs. But if that's not the location for me to file a lawsuit in, then it doesn't matter. I have to go to a place that has the authority to hear my case and actually give me relief. Many of these lawsuits did not meet that very basic, are you in the right building? The basic requirement of, did you take your complaint to the right person that has the authority to give you a response? That's sad that you can't even meet the basic requirement of knowing where to go. Do you know where you are? Second, you need to identify, once you know where you are, where you're supposed to go, you need to identify who you're complaining about, who's the person you're suing here. Many of these lawsuits failed to be able to identify a person or the correct person. How do you not know as a lawyer who you are suing or which person you're supposed to sue so that the court that you're in can actually give you relief that you requested? Third, you have to identify what was done that violated a law that this court has jurisdiction over, and you have to prove it with evidence. No, you don't get to choose what something that is entered into evidence and is called evidence is. Only the judge and the court can do that. And people that work in the court system, lawyers, paralegals, all of those folks, including Rudy Giuliani and the whole Trump team, they know that you can't call something evidence unless it's accepted by a judge as evidence. And none of the stuff that they submitted as evidence to a judge was considered evidence by the judge. So it wasn't ever evidence. And finally, you have to ask a judge to give you some type of relief. And you have to ask for something that the judge can actually do. Many of these lawsuits failed to ask for something that a court could actually do. In fact, many of them asked for injunctive TRO relief or some other type of estoppel that already had taken place. Asking for a judge to hop in a time machine and turn back time simply isn't realistic. And that's why most of these cases lost. People that once advised our president, like Chris Christie, had to painfully go on television time and again and say, either prove your case or stop lying. And more recently, he said, no, the Supreme Court didn't lack courage in taking your case. They didn't find merit in anything you submitted. You don't have a case. And there's a difference. And again, because I know so many Republicans, so many conservatives, and in fact so many legislators and people that understand the law know these basic things and have known them for quite some time and looked at those pleadings and saw these 101 Mickey Mouse mistakes and said, dear Lord, what is this? Is this a clown show? Is this a circus? It's certainly not any kind of lawyering that you would have, especially not for a president. So here is what another top Republican had to say. Now, granted, not all of these are going to be as straightforward as Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and have smiles attached to them, but this is what another member, top-ranking member of Congress, John Cornyn, senator from Texas, the state where the lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court came from. Mm-hmm. And this is what he said, okay? A top Senate Republican on Monday warned members of his party, of the Republican Party, not to challenge the Electoral College results when both chambers of Congress meet next month to officially tally them. Quote, I think that would be a bad mistake, said John Cornyn to reporters at the Capitol on Monday afternoon when asked about a possible GOP effort to object to the results. I think there comes a time when you have to realize that despite your best efforts, you've been unsuccessful. That's sort of the nature of these elections, Cornyn said. I just hope they realize that it would be futile to object, and it's unnecessary. Duke, your thoughts, because you were worried about this.
Yeah, I was like talking about this, and Cindy thought I was crazy. He said, "What are you talking about, crazy?" But what happened is I started researching what actually happens now. You know, the essential dates: December 14th, where Electoral College meets, December 23rd, where they have to have the votes received into Washington. The reason there's so much time is, remember, the Constitution was written back when it was Pony Day. They had to bring in the votes all the way to Washington. They had to come all the way from Wyoming and deliver them to Washington. So they gave them time till the 23rd of December. Then on January 6th, they have the sessions where they have the members of the Senate and the House get together and start counting the electors' votes, starting alphabetically. And there was a clause in there that if any senator with another House member would object to a electoral count, the Senate and the House would convene to go over this objection and then come back together and decide whether the objection is valid or not. Well, I thought, well, that's going to be disruptive, but they're not going to have the votes to overturn the electors and all the repercussions of what that actually means. So that's what he's speaking of. It's going to be embarrassing for people to do that at that late of a stage because it won't happen. It won't change anything. It'll just make them look foolish, and it'll cast shade on a new president coming in and the whole administration and the work that needs to be done.
And let me just be clear about something, okay? Acting foolish for the president up until today was the requirement du jour. Because, folks, let me just clarify something for all of you out there that have been fooled. I'm just going to call it what it is. You've been conned. You've been fooled by this ongoing effort. I mean, I'm not going to hate the player. I'm going to talk about the game here. President Trump is a politician now. And whether or not he wants to admit it, he's been a pretty crafty one. And he's raised over $200 million post-election for his, supposedly, for his election battle. Although if you look at the fine print, he can use it, most of it, any way he wants, including paying down his debt. But what you need to understand is that he's not the only one that has raised money as a politician for legal battle. I mean, guys, you've been watching my show for years. Many of you know how I have criticized all of these, legal funds that raise millions and millions of dollars for some battle that most people don't scrutinize, don't look at it and go, is that a battle that can even be won? Are the people that are in this battle, are they real lawyers? Do they know what they're doing? Is this going to be successful, or is somebody scamming me for my money? I would say you're being scammed for your money again. Not because, the intent is to defraud you per se. Although I do believe that most of the people involved in this stop the steal and continued fight over the election results know in their hearts and in their minds that there's no way forward. Because Lindsey Graham, John Cornyn, a lot of the people whose quotes we're looking at, they're lawyers and they know exactly where this is going and where it is not. Okay? And they've known for weeks. The fact that they haven't said anything up to now was because they didn't want to step on Trump's money collecting campaign. They don't step on each other in that regard. Plus, they need him to keep campaigning for Republicans and bring his base out to vote, especially in these upcoming runoffs, if they want to continue to control the Senate. Mm-hmm. So they all know, and they respect and leave room for Trump to go ahead and collect the money that he needs for whatever he's going to go off and do in the future. They would expect it to be done for each other if the tables were turned. There's really nothing that strange about what's going on there. But the fact of the matter is, in order for that continued effort and money raising to work, all of you out there need to think that there is a possible way forward. So that's why people have stayed silent in the Republican Party and in the Republican leadership, folks. Most of them, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, if it hurts your feelings, if you feel duped or lied to, I apologize. Maybe I'm not the one that should be making these apologies, but that's what the government and that's what the politicians have decided that they wanted to do. They strung us along with false hopes of the possibility of Trump being reelected because there really wasn't any. Even Chuck Grassley had to acknowledge that. And look at the words that are being used here, because he's not saying he's happy about any of this. They've been asking him whether or not Trump is president or Biden is president-elect, and he has refused to answer, even as he got the coronavirus. But now, this is what he said. When asked yesterday if he acknowledges Biden as president-elect, he said, "I don't have to acknowledge Biden as president-elect. The Constitution does." So he's like, you know what? Me and all of the people that still don't want Biden to be president and feel the need to continue to pretend he isn't, we are irrelevant now because the laws have taken over. The laws. They speak for themselves. The Constitution, and I have studied constitutional law, okay? The Constitution is the highest law of the land, and all of the other laws that we depend upon, they're very clear. And no Republican or Democrat or senator or Supreme Court justice can completely ignore them and supersede them, as we have seen.
And also, it's a good education for all of us that about how our government works. Like, we have three branches of government. It's like that gets lost in all this with the Supreme Court justices being appointed by the president and all that sort of thing, is that we have three branches of the government. You have Congress, you have the Supreme Court, and you have the president. You know, the administrative, you know, and the judicial and the decision making. And they're all equal parts of the government. So another government 101 learning we're going through all of this. And I think it's beneficial because we'll understand how our government works better that way.
Oh, I hope so. But I do believe that a lot of people that don't already know how our government works, and they're adult voters, and they didn't bother through this last 6 weeks of hell that we've been going through to study anything or
That's
learn
right.
anything. I mean, even you look things up
Oh, yeah.
that you didn't know about. So if you haven't done that, I don't know that they're going to start now. I mean, I really do think that civics should be mandatory for every adult in this country.
Well, you know, if you are taking your citizenship test, you need to know the answers to those questions.
Oh, you do.
You know, if you are trying to become a citizen of the United States, someone who's not a citizen, who becomes a citizen, knows more about you citizens, about your own country, than you do, because you haven't had to learn it to have the privilege of being a United States citizen. People who strive to become citizens, do all the things they need to do and take the test to become citizens, need to know these things.
And that's really shameful. Don't you think that it's a shame
Yeah.
that so many of our fellow American voters don't know, can't make heads or tails of what's happening, and are putting out all sorts of hopes, dreams, wishes of what they think should be happening that isn't. And so it's very easy to take those folks and incite them to believe that their government is being overthrown, or that their
Yeah.
government is lying to them, or that because the things that they do know for sure are very limited. But once again, this wave of senators and top-ranking Republicans specifically now admitting that the president-elect is Joe Biden. It is a message to all of his supporters and all conservatives and all Republicans that it is time to stop the madness, because, and this is true, your feelings don't matter anymore. The Constitution supersedes, the law supersedes, the certifications of the electoral votes supersedes whatever you are feeling. And let me tell you what a wise man, my grandfather, once told me. If your problem doesn't have a solution, then why worry about it? And if your problem has a solution, then why bother worrying about it? Our reaction of anger, of vitriol, division, and even violence to something we no longer have any control over is a waste of time, and as Senator Cornyn said, unnecessary. This is what another Republican, Tom Tillis, had to say. These are all people that were very tight-lipped up until today, totally behind President Trump's efforts to overturn the election results. And today, Tom Tillis says, Biden is the presumptive president. That's what he called him, quote unquote. And, of course, he mentioned that pending any litigation, there's no litigation anymore that has any way of overturning the election. You just heard from Lindsey Graham seconds ago. I showed you that. I see no way, right? So even as Tom Tillis says, oh, of course, pending anything that might be out there that could get in the way, Biden is our presumptive president. If you go through the Electoral College, he, meaning Biden, he's the presumptive president. But I don't want to discount valid legal disputes that'll be settled over the next couple of weeks. Sidney Powell just went out and told another whopper, bigger than the Hugo Chavez election steal, okay? She told another whopper. And in this whopper, she has said that she has got 3 or 4 more cases going to the Supreme Court. There are no such cases in the docket of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, she's lying. Or she's delusional is what she is.
Well, maybe she's planning on filing them, and that's why she's saying that they're going there, but they're not there. There is no there right now. And so I would just say buyer beware, because everybody knows that the jig is up, and all of these Republicans are signaling to the rest of their party, it's time. It's time. Take a look at even Roy Blunt. Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri said, he's the chairman of the inaugural committee, so that's important because this is what's, coming up on January 20th. For Biden, he said that the panel will now begin to deal with Biden, with Vice President Biden, as the president-elect. So the inauguration committee, just like the GSA, right? The person that was appointed by Trump that was running the GSA that refused to ascertain who the next president-elect would be, even though all of the rules required her to do so.
Exactly.
But Emily didn't want to until she was forced, her hand was forced, as have been the hands of many others, this man included, and he's saying publicly, we're going to inaugurate Joe Biden on January 20th. That has not stopped some people from remaining in fantasy land with Trump. There's not many people left because all of his horsemen and all of his men, they've already spoken publicly. Chris Christie, even radio show personalities like Rush Limbaugh. Lou Dobbs has criticized his legal team and has attacked people, including Stephen Miller, on his shows. Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson. The list is lengthy, folks. There are more enemies, including Fox News, of the Trump followers that are clinging to this hope now than there are allies. And the cannibalization among the Republican Conservative Party is dismaying. It's disturbing. But somebody that is still part of that ongoing delusion, and believe me, this is for an audience of one. It's not meant for all of you. It's meant to keep and appease President Trump while we finish out these remaining weeks of his administration. And of course, that is one of his closest advisors, Stephen Miller, who just went on television to say this. He claims that at the same time that the electors were voting yesterday, alternative electors for Trump were voting elsewhere. Well, let me cue you in on something. If you go and have secret elections of alternative electors that were not chosen by the majority of the votes in the state in an undisclosed location that wasn't in the legislative session, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and their plan too is that I heard them talking about this, that they're going to walk them in on the 20th.
Good luck
the
getting
6th.
in.
No, the 6th,
Yeah,
when they're counting the votes, and lay them on the table and say, here's our electors. And it would take the Senate and the House to vote on accepting those, which the scholars are saying won't happen because, one, not everybody's going to vote on that. They don't have enough votes in the Senate or in the House to overturn the electors in the country. So it's something that's not going to go anywhere. It's delusional. It's basically a political stunt. But again, it's not healthy to keep on doing this sort of thing for the people of this country.
I agree with you 1,000%. And this last slide I'm going to show you is just bonkers cuckoo. It's over the top. Here again is Attorney Lynn Wood, who President Trump retweeted, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And what Lynn Wood is saying here is bonkers, okay? He said, President Trump, at Real Donald Trump, is a genuinely good man. He does not really like to fire people. I bet he dislikes putting people in jail, especially Republicans. He gave Brian Kemp and Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger every chance to get it right, and they refused. They will soon be going to jail. That's a threat.
Oh, also, it's delusional. What, they're going to jail? Who's going to arrest them? And for what? For them doing their job in the state? They're elected officials. If the people of the states that they're elected.
Lynn Wood is not just an attorney. He was voted for to be a attorney general for the state of Texas. Honey, these are really dangerous words here.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying he's speaking on behalf of the president, and he's tagging the president, and the president retweeted it, so he saw it and he agrees with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that we need to look at the implications of what's being said here, because it's coming from the top enforcer of the law of the land, the executive, our president. He said, I agree with that guy that these two guys are going to be arrested. By the way, they're both wearing communist China masks.
Yeah, photoshopped onto them.
Photoshopped onto them. Obviously, they weren't wearing those, but they photoshopped these two, onto the faces of Raffensperger and Brian Kemp.
And they have pins too. What are the pins?
This is not normal. This is madness. That tweet is the epitome. That's the example of what not to do. And not only because it is ridiculous, but because when it doesn't come to pass, you are shown to be a liar once again. Again, these are not just my opinions. I have undergirded them with proof of where the Republican Party is headed and where the Republican Party and its followers are going to have to follow. That's all I have for you today on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and God bless.